Hi, my name is Rachel Eggenberger, and I'm presenting on the culture hero Heracles of Greek mythology, and how his life, his death, and his name highlight the Greek value of kleos, or glory, and illustrate the way that kleos offers reprieve from the destructive nature of time, or chronos. I'm going to briefly sum up his very long story, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. A lot of the summary is pulled from, well, all of it really is pulled from Gregory Nagy's The Ancient Greek Hero in 24 Hours and Emma Stafford's book, Heracles. So I have a family tree for Heracles because his ancestry is kind of convoluted, as Greek ancestries tend to be. So here we go. Perseus, the guy who killed Medusa, was Heracles' great grandfather. He was the ruler of two cities, Tiryns and Mycena. Perseus had three sons, Alcaeus, Electryon, and Sthenelus. Alcaeus, which means strength, was Heracles' grandfather and the father of Amphitryon, Heracles' father. Amphitryon would have been heir to both of Perseus' cities, except that he accidentally killed his uncle Electryon, and so he was sent into exile instead. And while in exile, he married a woman named Alcmene, and then one day he went off on a trip, and while he was gone, Zeus stepped in, disguised himself as Amphitryon, and slept with Alcmene, as he tended to do with mortal women. Then Amphitryon came home and also slept with Alcmene, as husbands tend to do with their wives. And Alcmene conceived two sons, Iphicles by Amphitryon and Heracles by Zeus, because that's a thing that's possible. Um, Now, Hera, understandably, was upset by this. Hera is Zeus's wife, by the way, and he had a habit of cheating on her. And Zeus had declared that the son born on a particular day would become the ruler. And so Hera delayed Heracles and Iphicles' birth until their great uncle Sthenelus' son Eurystheus. Oh, there's Hercules. Until Eurystheus was born, which gave Eurystheus power over Heracles. But that power ended up actually helping Heracles' story a ton. So Heracles grew up very strong and courageous with a big anger issue, but he always tried to make up for his mistakes. One example of that is when he married Megara, the daughter of the king of Thebes, and Hera, who was still pissed at Zeus, sent Heracles into a fit of rage that led him to kill Megara and their three children. And to make amends, he had to perform 12 labors for Eurystheus because of his political power. And these 12 labors gained Heracles a ton of glory. And he also performed many other glorious deeds, the most important one to our discussion being his saving the Titan Prometheus from an eagle that ate his liver every day of his immortal existence. More on that to come. After all this was over, Heracles should have returned home to his second wife, Deianira, but instead he took a concubine named Io because she was younger, and his wife was understandably annoyed with this. And so after almost being raped by a centaur, Heracles shot the centaur, and as the centaur was dying, he told Heracles' wife that his blood was a love potion. So she took some of that to use on Heracles, smeared it on his cloak. He put on the cloak, but psych, it wasn't love potion. The centaur was lying. It was poison. Heracles died, went to Olympus, and married Hebe, the personification of youth. And that's kind of the whole story. Okay. Now we're going to look back at Prometheus. So Prometheus was a Titan who they came right before the gods on Olympus. He stole fire from Zeus to give to humans, and as a punishment, Zeus sent Pandora to release evil in the humans, and then took Prometheus himself and chained him to a mountain to have his liver eaten by an eagle every day, and then regenerate overnight for the rest of his immortal existence. In Hesiod's Theogony, which is a big Greek poem, Prometheus' punishment is described as a disease, and Melissa Mueller and many other mythologists theorize that this disease is mortality itself. Now, Prometheus is immortal, but he's trapped in this endless cycle of dying, basically. And not only that, but he is sent far away. He can't control the situation, and he can't influence history anymore. So for an immortal, he's basically dead for all intents and purposes. But when Heracles saved him, Heracles received kleos, which means glory, fame, and that which is sung. Kleos is found in the myths and poems about heroes and their heroic deeds, and of the gods and their glories. Now, Heracles is dead now, but we still talk about him to this day. So kleos represents a different kind of immortality, one bestowed on mortal beings. Because of his great feats, the gods rewarded him, immortal, with a kind of immortality. One reason this is so important is that, as Hesiod says in another of his writings, Works and Days, humanity is always trying to figure out how to live in harmony with the seasons, or with Chronos. Chronos is seen as a destructive force, as it dictates when everything lives or dies. And Kleos is the only thing that elevates mortals above the destructiveness of Chronos. It's kind of a consolation prize, if you will, for those people who deserved immortality but were in fact mortal. And it offers reprieve to those of us who hear these songs and stories about them centuries later. Speaking of mortality, let's look back at Heracles' death real quick. Now, his wife accidentally killed him, and he was brought to Olympus to live forever. Dead, though, and he married Hebe, the personification of youth. As if it wasn't clear enough that Greeks have problems with Chronos and mortality, now the man who came closer to immortality than any other mortal is married to the antithesis of mortality, youth. And finally, we're going to unpack Heracles' name. There's kind of a lot here. Let's do it. Most mythologists propose that the name Heracles is a combination of Hera and Kleos, and that the name Heracles means one who has the Kleos of Hera. This seems kind of weird given that they hated each other, but Emma Stafford lists quite a few ways this actually makes a lot of sense in her book Heracles. First is the idea that since Hera is the goddess of seasonality and timeliness, Kronos basically, um, and you may recall that she messed with the timeline of Heracles' and Eurystheus' birth, which gave Heracles that power, which led to the 12 labors that led to Heracles' Kleos. So, much to Hera's dismay, she really is responsible for the Kleos that Heracles received. A few other mythologists believe that the animosity between Heracles and Hera didn't even exist in the actual story, and that was added later on. And Heracles simply performed those 12 labors at Hera's request, and so she granted him that Kleos willingly. Others feel that Heracles could have just been a name that his parents chose to honor Hera, who is the goddess of marriage and family. Still others say that Heracles wasn't even his original name. His name was Alcides, meaning descendant of Alcaeus, his grandfather, but that Hera herself renamed him Heracles in a grudging admission that her meddling had led to his Kleos. And others think his name was Alcaeus, which is his grandfather's name and means strength, and that he was given the name Heracles by the people of Argos after some of his glorious feats were performed. Whatever the case, Heracles' story shows the reverence that the Greeks had for immortality. And this fixation on immortality may seem kind of foreign, given our modern-day American society where we just don't talk about this. But when someone dies, we say, gone but never forgotten. So this idea still permeates our culture to this day. Their myths are important to them and to us because they immortalize us in our history. Their myths give Kleos, which gives hope to those of us left behind who are struggling to come to terms with the limitations of Kronos. Kleos is as close as we can come on Earth to living forever. That's what I got. Here come the sources real quick before the time runs out. Good Lord. Okay, cool. There they are. Bye.